Time for an overhaul. Hi, Million Mile Garage, Part 2, Front Struts and Driveshaft Seals.
Hard bass.
We're going to grab hold of this stabilizer shaft with a 16 millimeter, and that'll keep it from spinning. Alright, with the brake hose disconnected, the ABS sensor removed, we've got our stabilizer link disconnected, we've got both of our strut rod bolts removed from the steering knuckle. The only thing left to do is move to the top, and we're going to remove the 3 retaining nuts that hold the strut at the top of the strut tower. So let's take a trip upstairs.
3.
Okay, now that we're upstairs, we're going to remove the 3 panel plugs that are covering up access to the 3 mounting studs for the top of the strut into the strut tower. So I'm just going to come in with just a paint can remover and come in and grab these little tabs right here and pop them up. They come right off. Grab this one on the side here. Should come right up. Okay. Looking down through the holes, you should be able to see the studs with the nuts on them. The only problem is with my air wrench panning out, I can't get into them. So here's the solution. The 15 years we've had this van, we had no idea, and I just happened to be looking around for a solution to the problem, and lo and behold, there's another square there for the hood strut. So now with that out of the way, we can come in and grab each one of these studs and get them out. Okay, a couple things we did to get access to this rearmost bolt, and you can see it through here. Now you can see the studs. There's one, probably see the other one there, and then there's another one right down in here. So to get to this one, the wiper arm down inside the mechanism, I'm trying to point to it with my finger. You can actually see the extension is actually resting up against it. I'll see if I can come in through here. Maybe you can get a sneaky peeky at it. You can see part of it right there. It's galvanized. I had to put the wipers in the slight up position to clear. You probably could just remove the wiper arm and it would probably be a lot easier. I have the hood in the uppermost raised position, obviously, so I can get the power tool in there. The only thing you want to be careful about, if you do this, you don't want to accidentally turn the ignition on or do something where those wipers are going to try to come back down or go back up, because they're going to crash into the hood and make a mess. So what I did after I got them to where I wanted it is I just disconnected the battery. and that precluded me having to remove the wiper arm, which is not a huge deal. It looks like it could use a fresh coat of paint anyway. But anyway, we're gonna get to work and remove these, and I'll show you how we do it. Okay, super careful, panning in, coming in through the top so you can see what I'm doing. We're just going to come in and fish these out real carefully. We don't want these falling down anywhere where they don't need to go. And the only reason I'm fishing them out is I'm going to come back in later with the magnet and reattach them to the top of the new strut. See if this wiper arm will let me get past it. Oh boy, you're a tricky one. Okay, and we're gonna come up real careful. Gosh, I hope that doesn't fall off. There we go. Okay, with everything disconnected, I just have to remove these two lower strut bolts, mounting bolts, and it should just come right out. And it is kind of heavy. I want to be real careful not to catch any brake hoses and not damage my CV joint boot. And this thing should just slide right out. All right, I'm just gonna remove this brake caliper so that I don't have all this extra weight on here, and I think I probably need to get it off because the hose is gonna keep me from spinning this ball joint around far enough to get the drive shaft out. Yep, and I need to use a wrench on that one. Okay. All right. Just going to give it a gentle tug. It should just pop right out. There we go. This CV joint was giving me a bad time. This was an Advanced Auto Special I put in about 5 years ago, so it's not the factory one. And the only way I could get it loose was to pry against the case and smack it with a hammer to get the little circlip to go loose in there because this thing was jammed. So I'm just getting the rest of it out right now. Oh, okay. Try to do that without pulling it apart. There we go. There's the circlip. I'll tell you what, this one really came out hard, and the splines are really sharp. I know these Advanced Auto ones, they look like they wobble a little more than the factory one did. And I sure wish I still had my factory one, but it didn't make it up here with our move. You can see with this circlip, you see how it's boogered up a little bit right there? It's got a problem. It's got a nick in it. It came out of the inside of that inner spline in the that output shaft on the case. It came out hard, which probably means it's going to go back in hard, which probably means I need a new circlip. And then this CV joint probably has 50,000 miles on it. I know I had a rebuild kit for the aftermarket style I was thinking about doing, but looking at the shape of these splines and looking at this circlip, I don't think I'm going to stuff this one back in the car the way it is. But anyway, panning in here, you can see the seal that was leaking. You can see what a nice mess that's made. This leaky seal was just slinging transmission fluid everywhere. It's got all over the tie rod bellows. It's really made a mess of things. Now a lot of this was also oil that was leaking from the engine from up high, but you can see where this was just slinging. So after I fixed the rocker covers, it was still leaving puddles on the floor, which is disappointing, but the puddles were slightly reddish in color, so I knew it was transmission fluid. And just panning in a little bit, I'll let you see what that drive shaft goes into. You can see the inner splines that goes into, and then there's a circlip that clicks into those. And sometimes they get stuck in there like that one was. And you don't want to pry against that aluminum case too much because you risk damaging the case. I was really afraid about cracking the case, which would be a really bad thing. So while I was prying on the case with the bar, I just took a big hammer. I took a big condenser and just wrapped on the outside of the CV joint while I was prying on it, and it was enough to get it loose. I got lucky. But you can see how that circlip was chewed up. I'd probably have a hard time getting that to go back in, so I'm probably going to just replace that drive shaft. I hate to do that, but the splines on it didn't look so great either, and they never fit as tight as the factory one did. It looks like to me they kind of wore kind of funky. They got some real sharp edges to them, so I think I'm going to go get another one. But we'll go ahead and we'll get this seal out and get it replaced. So when we stick a drive shaft back in, whether it's a new one or if I actually decide to try to work with this one, we'll get it back together. We're just going to pop this seal out. That comes out pretty easy. There's the old one. I should have done that when I put the CV shaft in 50,000 miles ago. So we're just going to take a brand new one and slide it in. I think I'm going to clean up and have some lunch, and I think we're going to be taking a trip to Advance Auto again and get another one of those crappy axles, but at least it'll be good for another 50,000 miles. Get ready to press in the new seal. Stick it in the hole here. Try to get it in as straight as I can. These go in pretty easy. It looks like I got it. Whoop. Oh yeah. Okay. Looks like I got it pretty good. All right, I got it pressed into the bore. I'm going to take a block of wood and hammer it in a little bit because I don't have a lot of room to maneuver. And the block of wood's not going to hurt the seal. So I'm just going to come in, position the block of wood straight over it, and I'm just going to go in and gently tap it in. That's just about got it. Just going around with a brass drift, just seating it in where the block of wood couldn't get it. That's it. It's flush. All right, we put a little grease on the end of the splines and on the circlip. That way we don't nick the seal when we go in. And I'm just going to take this and slide it in. All right, we're just going to stuff this back in the hole. This should go back in pretty easy. Through. Yep, there we go. I have to wipe my greasy fingerprints off of this rotor, but I'm going to install the new nut on. And We'll finish torquing this when we got the wheels on the ground. I'm just going to take the center cap off the rim. We'll torque it down right. We'll just get this in here for now. All right, with our new Monroe quick strut, which already comes with the top strut mount, strut bearing, and coil spring installed, we're going to have to stuff this up in the hole, up through here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab it on top of one of these mounts on top of the steering knuckle first. And then I'm going to attempt to line these 3 studs up with these 3 holes up in there in the strut tower. So let's give it a shot. Let's stuff it. Okay, all I gotta do is hang one of these on here. Go ahead and grab the other one too while we got it. There we go. And I don't know if you can see there. I've got at least one of the studs lined up. It looks like I need to rotate it just a little bit. And then I'm going to use the floor jack to push those 3 studs up through the holes. Got to be real careful doing this here so you don't booger up the holes. Just going to raise this just a little bit as I push this up in the hole. All right, now for the fun part. We're going to take a magnet. We're going to take one of our mounting bolts at the top of the strut on the stud. I'm going to center it just like that. And we're going to come in here. We're going to go right through the hole. And get it started. And that's ready to be torqued down. We just have to get the other 2 done. All right, showing one more time. Take my little pencil magnet, I center it on the nut. I'm gonna come in the next hole. I'm gonna pick a hard one. I gotta go right by this windshield wiper mechanism down here. It's gonna try to grab it. I'm gonna go right through the hole. Okay, I'm just going to snug them up with the air wrench. I'll come in with a torque wrench later. I'll let this do most of the work. All right, we're just going to snug these up to 35 foot-pounds. All right, those are torqued. Only thing left to do, we'll stick the plugs in the little holes. No extra charge for that. Stick this one in here. All right. And then I get to go look for the one I dropped down in the engine bay. Awesome! Okay, I saw it from the top, so I'm going to fish around here and see if I can find it. I think I got it. Bingo! All right, a lot of folks also, well, of course the instructions are to peen this nut over into the little square cutout on the end of the shaft. That's to keep it from backing out, but I have to look up the torque spec. I don't remember what it is, but I think it's like 200 foot-pounds, something like that, maybe more. It's a huge torque number. I've never had one of these come loose. I mean, they always come off hard, and I don't really see it as a safety issue because the hub that it's going through is attached to a press bearing that's pressed into the steering knuckle, and the braking disc is captured by the caliper mounting bracket and the brake caliper itself. So if this were to completely back off, other than it making a lot of racket, maybe it would cause loss of motion of the vehicle, I don't know. But it definitely is not going to be something that would cause you to lose control of the vehicle or cause the front wheel to come off. So I never peen these in because just like what I had to do to take this apart to replace the seal, you know, if you were reusing the shaft, you may have to be chasing another nut down. And I would prefer not to do that. But again, the right way is to peen it in. I'm doing it the wrong way. You make up your mind. Just going to come in and go ahead and tighten up the strut mounting bolts to the steering knuckle. I'm using a 7/8 wrench on the nut side. I don't have another metric socket or wrench that fits that, and it just turns out sometimes those sizes kind of line up, so this fits good enough that it's not going to wallow anything out. And I'm just going to come in and tighten this up really tight. Reattaching the stabilizer link rod, and you can see it does not line up. So the only way I'm going to get this to line up is with the floor jack. So I have the floor jack underneath the lower control arm, so I'm just going to move this, and I'll get out of the shot so you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to lift this control arm until it lines up and I can slide it in. That looks pretty close. We'll bring it up just a tad. That looks dead on. There, now I can reattach the nut and tighten it. To mark it stabilizer link, and I'm going to use a 16mm to grab the hex behind it so the shaft doesn't spin when I'm trying to tighten it. And I'm going to put my nut on. I'm just going to go in on the number 1 setting. I'm going to come back and hit these with a torque wrench later, but I just want to get these tightened on. Moving on to the vehicle speed sensor, we're going to reinstall it over here. Okay, all I got to do is just snug down the vehicle speed sensor screw. Probably takes about 6 foot-pounds. It's a little screw, you don't want to wring it off. Just has to be snug. Snap in the speed sensor harness right here. This is the replacement bracket that comes with the strut assembly, and it should snap right in place. Just like that. Only thing we got left to do is we'll put our caliper on. This should go right back on the way it came off. It's going to make me work for it, of course. There we go. That slides right in. Just grab my caliper bolts, slide those in. And 13, we're going to just snug these down. They don't have to be gorilla force. They're not real large fasteners. I don't bother looking up torque specs for stuff like this, but if I had to guess, I'd say it's probably no more than 15 or 20 foot-pounds. Just good and snug. good and snug. Reattaching the brake hose to the strut assembly. It's got a threaded insert just like the factory one. Just going to take the factory hardware to put it back on. I'm just going to come in with a 12mm socket and snug it down. Yeah, it just has to be snug. And that's it. We're ready to put our wheel on. I'm just going to get this on so it's good and snug. There we go. With the parking brake set tight, we're just going to go in and see how tight we got it with the impact wrench before. I'm just going to come in and I have this torque wrench set to its max 150 foot-pounds. Let's see if we get a click. We do. Most of the specs I've looked up say 181 foot-pounds, so I'm going to say without reservation that's at least 180 foot-pounds tight, and I just think there's absolutely no danger of this nut coming loose. I don't bother peening them in. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do. I'm just simply saying that's what I do and I've always done on this car. I've never had one back out. So I'm ready to pop the cap back on, finish torquing the lug nuts, and then I'm going to move on to the other side. Mission accomplished. Okay, we're going to take the passenger side off and we're going to move it along pretty quickly because we've already shown you how to do the other side. A helpful tip: if you have one of these braking discs that's stuck on the hub, you can take this 10mm headed screw that holds the brake line onto the strut bracket, and you can thread it into one of the two threaded holes on the braking disc, and you can crank that in and you can use that to press the disc off in case it's frozen around the hub. Sometimes that happens. It's a heavy sucker. And there you go. The new one, front, left, right. The spacing between these two studs right here is wider than it is on the other spacing from this one here at the point. So I don't think you can actually put it in backward. This boot's just overextended a little bit because I got the spindle pulled back, so it'll go back. That's no big deal. The boot's in good shape. But if you look in there, you can see there's a heat shield around this drive shaft. It's got, I think, two or three bolts that hold it on. That has to be removed before you can remove the center bearing carrier. And then there's also, I think, a second heat shield back there to get that off. I'm just showing you what you have to do. It's not real involved. It's just time consuming. So if we were going to replace the seal on this side, we'd do what we did on the other side. We'd go ahead and we'd remove the axle. And on this one, you'd be driving the axle out from behind. You would just use a big chisel or a big 2x4, whatever you can fit in there, and wrap on it with a hammer from the back and push it out. And then you're going to have to remove that center carrier to get to the inner drive shaft to replace that seal. And I'll get underneath the car and show you that in a minute. Okay, up underneath the car on the passenger side, this is the outer half of the CV axle assembly. To get this out, if you're just going to replace the outer half, you can just take a suitable object like a brass drift, and you'll have to hammer it out because you don't really have anything to lever against like if it was actually in the case. And you can see the CV boot on this one. It looks like it's leaking a little bit, and I pretty much got it back in shape from overextending it before. When you take them out and drive them, they usually sort themselves back out, but I really probably should consider putting a new boot on that or just replacing the axle. And it has the same problem that the other axles did from 5 years ago. It fits kind of wobbly inside where it plugs into the inner or stub shaft assembly, and coming around, here it is, there's the other side, and you can see the bracket that half shaft goes into, and it's just got a sealed bearing that rides on. And you can see the outer heat shield. It has 2 or 3 bolts that holds it on, and you have to remove the heat shield first if you were going to replace the seal here. Now you can see it's pretty oily, but that's motor oil. I had a massive rocker cover gasket failure, and it just showered the engine with motor oil everywhere. But there's not any red oil being slung on this side. And since I'm probably going to consider replacing that drive shaft on that end and rebuilding it, I don't have a kit or another shaft today. That seal's in good shape, so I'm not going to be replacing that today, but I'll at least show you guys what you have to do it. You can see it's got a sheet metal part on it. It's kind of a seal protector, so you can't really lever that out of the case. So once you get that bracket unbolted, when you get that heat shield off, you'll either have to bang that back out carefully with a block of wood. Sometimes you can just grab a hold of the bracket and pull outward, and you can get the shaft to come loose from the case. And that's a factory shaft, and it doesn't fit wobbly at all. They usually come out pretty easy. I've had this one out before when I worked the drive shafts over. Some people prefer, I think, to separate the halves once you get it out. You can actually, I think, remove the entire assembly out of the car in one piece, and then separate the halves when you get out of the car. I guess it's a matter of preference. I think it can be done either way. I think when I did it, I took the whole unit out at one time the last time. Looking over here on the driver's side, this new axle shaft fits nice and tight. This was a CarQuest brand, and I'll post the part number at the end of this video and show you the box. It's shaped and looked exactly like the OEM unit did, and it snapped back into the transmission perfectly, and it does not wobble like the other one did. It has just the slightest bit of play like a factory one had, but the other one must have wobbled 3 times as much, and it pretty much wiped the seal out and really made a mess of things on this side. But really happy with the way that one fit. That was a CarQuest brand I got from Advance Auto, and it seems like it's light years ahead in quality that the other one was.
Okay, I'm going to try to get it in here without pinching anything we're not supposed to. There we go. Just about ready to shove a bolt in there. Okay. These always go in hard. Okay, we'll shove him back up a little bit into the hole. There we go. There we go. I'm going to stick this one in backwards just to get it lined up. All right, I got one in. So then we'll grab the second one and stuff it in. Now, I'm just going to take this and jack it up a little bit. And those should line right up with the holes. Okay, so the head plate's turning. I just can't get this to line up. So I'm going to have to pull on this like that.
Oh, there you go.
Got it?
I think that's it.
There we go. Let's see if I can just give it a little push with the jack.
Oh, yeah.
Just pan around. We got all three. Looks good. I think we got it. Yep, that's got it. All right, just feeding the nuts in. We have to make them. Okay. 35 foot-pounds. Put the brake hose back on. It's going onto the new bracket. It's going in a little tighter than I'd like, but it will go in. Yep, there we go. It started. That should go in. Yep, that's good. I don't know how tight those are on number 2 setting, but I know when I put a torque wrench on them, they're plenty tight. They're not going to come off. Only thing left to do is snap in the plugs. Okay, the CarQuest drive shaft I got for the driver's side was an NCV 36564. I think it fit fantastic and it drives fantastic with it. And the Monroe rear shocks, I don't think I mentioned those earlier, those were 37316s. Those are the OE Spectrum, which I think was really the old Sensatrax. I think actually the front struts and the Spectrum rear shocks, I think those are still the Sensatrax style or version of Monroe, and they just have different names for them, I guess, for trucks and vans. Thanks for tuning in to part 2. Yesterday was not without problems. The first problem I had is the seal I got for the driver's side, which is listed as a 710-300, and that's what I ordered. And that's what it says it fits. Output shaft seal left, Honda Trans. And when I got it, the seal that was in the box is slightly smaller in diameter than the factory seal. It's kind of hard to see unless I hold it up a little bit. It's off by just a few thousandths, and all it did was drop in the hole. It wouldn't press in. So the Timken one is the one that's brown. So it wouldn't fit. So I had to go to Advance Auto and get an Advance Auto seal, which actually did fit in the hole properly. That's the one that you saw me drive in the video. So the other problem I had is the struts that I ordered, and I double checked to make sure I ordered the right ones, and it says TS17536 coil assembly right, that's passenger side, and then coil spring mount assembly front left,
That's a TS17537. Well, I ordered the right ones. So the 537 that I needed yesterday, this is what was marked on the box, and this is what I got. So if you look at this strut right here, you can see that it's about a third smaller than the strut on the left, which is the one I removed. The one on the right is the passenger side strut. So you can see a complete difference in design. And you know, when I laid these out and took the picture for the intro on the video, I didn't even notice that. I was in such a hurry to cut the video. And there's such a difference in size. I'm kind of mad at myself I missed it. But the other 17537 that's sitting here, this is the one that I just got from Advance Auto last night or this morning. And we'll crack that one open and make sure that it matches exactly the one that I removed yesterday. Long day yesterday. Okay, I'm just going to rip this one open and see if this actually is the correct one. And yep, this one's got 4 coils on it. It's got the correct mount for the brake line. So this should be exactly like the one I removed yesterday. And I bought quick struts because I wasn't sure what kind of condition the strut mount would be in on this, which actually it doesn't look that bad. Just panning in and looking at that. But the difference in price was a little more. I could have bought the cheaper ones, but it just seemed like such a smart thing to do. But as you can see, this one marked 172537 is the correct part. Here's the one I got from Rock Auto, marked 172537. This was like something that would fit a Honda Civic or something. I mean, it is considerably less mass. I can't believe I didn't notice that the other day. But hey, things happen. And by the way, the seal that I bought at Advance Auto yesterday was a National Oil seal, and its part number was 712551. That fit the driver's side drive shaft or output shaft seal on the transmission. The Timken one I got that was listed to fit the driver's side, 710300, it did not fit. It just fell right into the bore. There was no way you were going to get a press fit. The bore with my fingers, and these go in pretty easy. That's a bad sign. Cut. Yeah, specking out at like 1.188. I'm pressing it a little bit, but it's about 1.188. And then if we take the other one, this is the one that came out of the car, and it specs at right around 2.2, maybe just a tad over if you're not compressing it. So didn't take much of a difference, like maybe, I don't know, 0.010 of an inch or so, and then there was no press fit. It just didn't work. It's part of the nightmare that wouldn't end with this strut job on the driver's side. I tried to reconnect the sway bar link, and it looked like the threads were wiped out. And I thought maybe I cross-threaded it, but I don't think that was the case. Coming down and looking at what happened here. This is the end that goes into the sheet metal part, which would be on the strut end, so it's not as thick as the sway bar. And you can see the nut here. They peen them like that at the factory. You see how they distort the thread? And I remember these went on hard when I put them on. And I think what happened is when I backed it out, they kind of jam on and it wiped the threads out with it. And just to prove that theory, when I unbolted the other end, and this is the end that went through the sway bar, and you can see not as much of the thread was wiped out, but there's still some of the lock nut remnants actually stuck in the, it's like it's stuck on the threads there, kind of boogered them up. Same deal, you can see where they peen the threads in 3 spots. So this doesn't really want to thread back on easily, so it's screwed up, and then of course trying to put it on, it's just going to continue to strip the threads that you put on it. So very disappointing. The new sway bar link that I picked up, the lock nuts that came with that are more the traditional style where it's just ovaled a little bit, and they seem to thread on okay. So we're going to This is what we ended up installing on the van. The other one was just too jacked up to put it back together. Very unfortunate. So this will be like my 4th trip I had to take to the auto parts store to get this done. So yeah, another unplanned expenditure, and quite unpleasant, but relatively easy to deal with. The nightmare that never ends. Look at that. Trying to tighten this grease fitting in. It's barely hand tight. And look at that. The whole end plate is spinning in the forging. It wasn't pressed in all the way.